Good morning, Liberty. Happy Thanksgiving to you, or Thanksgiving in advance. It is Wednesday morning, November 21st, 2018, the day before Thanksgiving. I hope you have some fun and happy plans for the weekend. I'm definitely taking a little bit of time off myself, not doing any travel. It's a bit expensive, and I hate travel in the first place. I'm not a big fan of the TSA groping me, spying on me. It's an uncomfortable situation. And then you add a pretty high cost. So I guess I'll do a Skype call with family this year. But I've got some out here that I'm going to be able to spend some time with. My lovely partner, Sarah. We're going to probably go see her brother who lives down in Orange County. He works at a bar and restaurant. So, of course, service industry, he's working, so we're going to try to sneak in on him, and hopefully he's not watching this because that would ruin the surprise. But anyways, I hope you have some nice Thanksgiving plans. I'm very grateful for those of you who are spending some time with me today. Hi to Matt Hugh. Oh, man, has the flu. But it won't stop me from smashing that like. That is awesome. That is awesome. Hope you get better soon, and I hope you have a good couple of days to relax and recover, Matt. And that reminds me, and thanks to Matt Hugh in the live chat here on YouTube, if you like what we're doing, whether you're watching us live or in the archives, whether it's on YouTube or BitChute or Brighteon.com or Twitter or Facebook or through the podcast, iTunes, just hit the like button, rate, review, give us positive feedback. Of course, leave some comments here, either watching live or later on in the archives. We love hearing from you. I do read through all the comments, and I do my best to get back to them as well. Hi to EHP Training and Justin Bayola as well. So this being Thanksgiving weekend, I know they have the big Black Friday thing is now turned in from one day to a couple of weeks, it seems like, and now there's a Black Friday over the summer. So there's a lot of people doing spending, right? A lot of people are spending money. People save up their time. I remember my grandmother years ago when she was alive, she would, count pennies all through the year so she could save up to buy gifts for her kids and her grandkids, or whatever, 20 grandkids, whatever she had. And, it taught me that if you really wanted to spend a bunch of money, if you wanted to spend, you had to save and you had to count how much came in versus how much goes out. And that, unfortunately, is not how things work in government. That's a pretty good segue, right? And Matt says, probably safer that way, less mobs trampling people. I've actually only once in my life gone to a shopping mall on Black Friday weekend. And I know some people hate that term, but I don't know what else to call it. I've never really had a chance. I use it as a time to kind of get away and not spend time with all the chaos, especially living in Los Angeles. That would be extremely dangerous for me. But my grandmother used to, I would say she'd penny pinch all through the year so she could buy gifts. She was planning, that was her choice, how she wanted to spend her money. She worked a part-time job well past retirement age because she just wanted to do this. This is what made her happy. So kudos for her. Kudos for her for budgeting. Government never seems to do that. And of course, what happens? We've covered the national debt here a number of times, the amount of crazy spending, whether it's from the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act for 2019 that got approved, the omnibus spending bill, the $1 trillion of spending, the $22 trillion in national debt, close to it. Ted Cruz voting to fund Obamacare after being willing to shut down government when Obama was in office. It really perverts people's principles. This type of approach where, when you're in charge, you just spend through the roof. I also want to say hi to Ryan Patrick in Kentucky. That's awesome. Good to see you here. So we've been doing some reports on this, and Mike Meharry, who also writes for Schiff Gold, he's, I think, the lead writer for Peter Schiff at schiffgold.com, and he does a weekly podcast wrap-up. So Mike has developed a lot of expertise on general economic issues from an Austrian perspective. And his most recent report points out that the Trump administration is on track for a $1 trillion budget deficit for 2019. The 2019 fiscal year just started. It's some accounting thing, or maybe it's time to do with Congress. I guess I'd have to ask Mike, or maybe someone can tell me in the chat why the dates are weird, but I don't know. So we're into the 2019 fiscal year. And the Trump administration, as Mike reports, is on track to post a 2019 fiscal year budget deficit of over $1 trillion. These are the kind of budget deficits we would expect to see during a deep recession, not an economic boom. According to the Treasury report, the deficit came in. Now, things are going crazy just in its first month. So the deficit came in at $100 billion just in October. That represents a 58% increase from $63 billion deficit recorded in October 2017. Spending rose 18% year on year, and revenues increased by 7%. So Peter Schiff has been, if you listen to his podcast, I listen to it through here on YouTube. He's been updating pretty regularly as the markets have started to take a real nosedive, as he's been calling for quite a long time. And he talks about how, man, we love, tax cuts are great, but if you have tax cuts without government cuts, if you get tax relief without government relief, you're going to run into serious problems that are only going to be resolved by the next administration coming in and claiming that free market capitalism is driving everyone to the brink of bankruptcy, and it can only be solved with more socialism. And that's what Schiff has been warning. I am convinced he's absolutely correct on that. And that's why I think it's so important to continue pointing out the crazy spending. And if you just look at it from a constitutional perspective, if they were following the Constitution, there's no way they would need $1 trillion in the first place, not much less $1 trillion budget deficit. So if you're talking about revenues increasing by only 7%, we want the revenues to increase 0. We want it really to go down because taxation is stealing, it's theft. They don't need to take all that money that they're taking from us. And when they do, they use it for unconstitutional programs. So it's positive to see that. But if they're not cutting spending at all, if they continue to blast us with more and more spending, bigger budgets, bigger omnibus spending bills, then the whole thing is going to eventually come down. Mike goes on. Spending last month continued the pace of the last fiscal year. The federal government ended 2018 with the largest budget deficit since 2012. Largest since 2012. And the current Treasury Department estimate projects a total fiscal 2019 deficit over the $1 trillion mark, coming in at $1.085 trillion. It was $779 billion in the red, which added to the crazy national debt. So Mike notes that we keep getting told that the economy is in the midst of a boom. Everything is great. The economy is beautiful. But when Trump was running for office, he was saying the correct thing. He was saying things are in a big fat bubble. They certainly were inflating things to a big fat bubble that was only going to burst. And this is what happens. Instead of slowly letting the air out or being honest and warning about it once he got into office, Trump just started claiming credit for the boom, the bubble, the insanity, the additional manipulation of the currency, the devaluation of the currency that they've been doing, and the additional spending from Washington, D.C. So artificially low interest rates continue to drive the markets higher and higher until they just can't do it anymore. Things that can't go on forever don't. Mike also points out that annual interest payments already approach $500 billion, and every uptick in the interest rate increases that number. At the current trajectory, the cost of paying the annual interest on the U.S. debt will equal the annual cost of Social Security within 30 years. It'll probably be faster because at the pace that they're increasing at this point, there's no reason that a President Warren or a President Sanders or someone from that ilk, basically a philosophical socialist or Keynesian, is going to take what Trump is doing and just crank it through the roof, because that's what's going to protect everybody, of course, is more government spending. Justin says, time to start cutting departments, not just fat. Maybe that deficit is making you sick, not the flu. That's to Matt Hugh. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, so someone is making $500 billion a year. I don't know who that someone is, just collecting interest, which is absolutely insane. So kudos to Mike Meharry for doing these types of reports. And of course, every time we publish one of these, and this is what I kind of wanted to get into a little bit more, was we're just pointing out facts. This is bad. This type of spending shouldn't be happening. If you've got a constitutional president, the president is going to veto everything, first of all. Everything that gets across his desk, he's going to veto it. And he's going to risk challenging the Congress to impeach him. And that is a real backbone stand. Thomas Jefferson, when he was in office, and he had written to Abigail Adams years later about the Alien and Sedition Acts, which her husband pushed through, which were illegal, unconstitutional, immoral, set the stage for the drafting and passing of the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions of 1798, formalizing the already established principle of nullification. But he had written to Abigail Adams that it was his duty to make sure, as president, that something that he saw as unconstitutional was undermined and not faithfully executed at every turn possible. And I'm paraphrasing. I should probably do an episode on that entire letter at some point. And one of these days I should do an episode on all the episodes that I say I should probably do an episode on. But that would take me going back and looking at everything. So a constitutional president, at least one that's approaching things from their constitution and from their oath to preserve, protect, and defend it, is going to reject everything that gets to his desk or her desk. Just plain and simple. Not come up with excuses. And we're repeatedly hearing excuses. I know Trump does not claim to be a constitutionalist, but Constitution supporters have told us for years now that 2 while he's in office and another year or so while he was running, that all you need to do is elect Trump and we don't have to worry about these things. We don't have to worry about the dangers of the debt. We don't have to worry about the surveillance or the wars or the gun control. We don't have to worry about these things that continue to happen to this day. And now this report from Mike Meharry, it's of course in the show notes and over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty, where you can find show notes for all our episodes, plus the links to all of our alternative platforms that we use, Brighteon.com, BitChute, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Keyport, and the like. This report isn't saying, oh, Trump is a horrible guy. Trump is a bad person. It's just pointing out that these things keep happening. Now, Brian NX gives us one of the excuses in the chat. Congress controls the purse, buddy. Call Paul Ryan. Well, yeah, of course. They shouldn't be passing these things. But the president should veto everything that funds unconstitutional programs. Period. If you are a constitutionalist. Now, if you're okay with making excuses, that's different. People can take the Constitution and run with it and be okay with it and hate it for whatever reasons they want. I can't control that. But if my job is to talk about the Constitution, to preach the Constitution, every issue, every time, no exceptions and no excuses, then I'm going to point out that signing these spending bills is wrong. It shouldn't happen. Period. It shouldn't be passed. And things are so in such a bad place that it's unlikely that we're going to find anyone with the courage to veto stuff or to stop voting to pass this type of garbage. But that doesn't mean we just pretend that it's okay or we pass the buck to somebody else. They're all part of the problem because they keep giving us more unconstitutional garbage. Now, going back to my point about Mike's report, if you read this, it actually isn't even saying anything personal about Trump. It isn't really written as an op-ed. It's written as a financial news report, an economy news report. It doesn't actually say, oh, Trump is bad. That's me saying that he's bad. His report is merely saying that the deficit is massive. Spending is massive. Revenues are up much less than spending is. So 7% to 18%. And this creates problems. But every time we share this, we'll post this on Facebook or we'll share it on social, we get apologists for the central government telling us how we're bad for pointing this out. Or we're stupid, we're blind. Can't you just shut up about this? Where were you when Obama was in office? Let's go through a little bit of this. Mike actually, he doesn't really hit back on this a lot in his blogging, but he did a blog in response to this. And it's titled, Obama Did It Doesn't Excuse Trump. And he writes, every time we publish anything critical of President Trump's profligate spending. We get angry replies and excuses from Trump supporters. They often come in the form of, quote, Obama did it, or Obama was worse. And he says, so tell me, how does that excuse Trump? I mean, just being a little bit less bad than what many people consider the worst in history does not make you a good guy. It makes you a little bit less bad than the second worst or the worst or second worst in history. So we posted this article or his previous article on these massive budget deficits, $1 trillion, unfathomable amounts. Bill Clinton never did anything like that, and he was horrible. And of course, he points out, Mike says, some Trump supporters replied with the delusional fantasy that we need not worry because economic growth will fix the budget problem. But in fact, levels of debt already burdening the economy make that highly unlikely. Debt retards growth. Too much debt means you can't have growth because you're always paying the interest. You just can't cover this stuff. We've been hearing this garbage for decades, and the debt keeps getting worse, and eventually that's going to come due. But by far the most frequent refrain is, quote, Obama was worse. Now here's an example. And it's weird because I guess Mike just put the exact quote. So we get some misspellings here. I guess I got to read through it. The deficit increased almost $10 trillion with the Obama administration. That was $1.25 trillion every year. Where was the whining then? $1.25 trillion while Obama was in office. Absolutely, horribly unconstitutional. And in fact, when you get people like Rachel Maddow and MSNBC, we were creating so much opposition to this type of stuff in the Obama administration. Maddow and MSNBC put out a 10-piece special segment on how these bad, evil, racist people from the 10th Amendment Center were opposing the Obama administration. We wanted to bring back slavery, according to these people. The Southern Poverty Law Center listed me personally as one of the top leaders of the radical right, dangerous hate mongers, because of our opposition to the Obama administration. So it's absurd when these people say, where was the whining back then? Well, we've been around since 2006. We were whining when George Bush was in office. We're whining when Obama was in office. We're going to continue whining when Trump's in office or anybody's in office anytime we see violations of the Constitution. That's our job. A lot of people don't like hearing that because they don't care about the Constitution. They care about personalities and Team A versus Team B. And us pointing this out just exposes them. So Mike asked this. Here's the real question. Why isn't this dude upset that his guy is doing the exact same thing that Barack Obama did? I thought these people hated Obama. It seems to me that the fact Trump is acting just like Obama would cause a little bit of concern. So if Obama is racking up $1.25 trillion every year and Trump is going to do 1.08, it's pretty damn close. And Obama was terrible. And if Obama was terrible, that means Trump is terrible on this as well. And there is no excuse. Now, you can love him for attacking the liberal media. I can watch Donald Trump, and the guy's got an amazing sense of humor. And I find it funny when he goes after CNN. And I wish he'd do the same for Fox, because they're all garbage. They're all propagandists. But I do like seeing that. It actually kind of pierces that veil of superiority that the media supposedly has over all of us. So that's great. But as far as the Constitution goes, as far as spending the country into oblivion, he keeps signing these things that the garbage Paul Ryan, and now what are we going to get? If Paul Ryan and the Republicans are giving us this, what's it going to be like with Nancy Pelosi? It's going to be even worse. And that's what Peter Schiff has been warning for quite a while. So Mike points out, regardless, the notion that Obama's horrible record on spending and running up debt somehow justifies Trump's horrible record on spending and running up debt is patently absurd. But let's look a little deeper into this guy's claim. Was Obama's spending actually worse? Here are the deficits beginning with Obama's first year in office. And you can actually look at this. His first year was $1.5 trillion. Now keep in mind that's carryover from the Bush administration from the previous year. So Bush was incredibly bad on this. But his following year was $1.3 trillion. in 2010. 2011, 1.3 trillion. 2012, 1.1 trillion, trending down a little bit. 2013, 679 billion. 2014, 484 billion. 2015, 438 billion. It's trending down. 2016, it started to go up back close to 600 billion. And then Trump has just gone 665, 779 for 2017 and 2018. And now 2019 is going to be over $1 trillion. So Trump is trending things back up. So the point is, if Trump is 1.085, and sometimes numbers make me glaze over. So those of you who are just listening rather than looking at the video, I apologize if this is boring. But the point is, Obama was worse than Trump in 3 out of 8 years than the 2019 Trump deficit. 3 out of 8. So one of them are tied. And this coming year, Trump is worse than the entire second 4 years of the Obama administration. So Obama was a little worse, or a lot worse, 1.5 to 1. And then a lot better. Well, I can't call it better because these $600 billion numbers are awful too. So less bad. So Trump was actually worse than 4 years of Obama on this. He needs to absolutely oppose all the programs or he's not a good guy, period. So those numbers are right here on the website. We will post those. For those of you watching YouTube, the live stream, you can see the link to that. You can click through. We actually get the source right from here at the St. Louis Fed. So we know the numbers. They're legit. They're right from the government themselves. And, well, I mean, government does manipulate these numbers. And maybe someone's excuse is going to be like, well, the St. Louis Fed hates Trump, so they're going to lie about the numbers. And I think this shows the delusion. No matter what you say, we're always going to come up with some kind of excuse. So Mike points out the obvious. None of this justifies Obama's crazy spending, because I can't say profligate. I apologize for that. But it does serve to illustrate that saying Obama did it doesn't excuse Trump from doing the same thing. So I do hope that in your Thanksgiving weekend and Christmas season shopping, you don't approach things like Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Paul Ryan or Nancy Pelosi or any of these criminals. You approach things like my grandmother did. You pay attention to your budget. You don't rack up more debt, because that's how we really have to do things. And, I'm preaching to myself as well. We have to be opposite of what these government people are. So that leads me to the quote of the day, because the point is, all these things are funding stuff that violates the Constitution. Whether it's Social Security or Obamacare. Somebody had the audacity to tell us yesterday that the Trump administration isn't even funding Obamacare. Well, Obamacare still exists. And although they're cutting back the marketing budget to $10 million, there's $10 million being spent on marketing for new signups. They're still spending money to actually run the system. And even if they don't spend it directly and the states are spending money, there's so much federal money going to the states on other programs that it really all kind of comes from the same pool. That is the honest income of we, the people. So all of this stuff violates the Constitution. The mass surveillance, the military presence all over the world, the donations to prop up dictators, the war in Yemen. All of this stuff is just bad news. Asset forfeiture. And you can't excuse that. If you believe that the Constitution needs to be followed instead of ignored, and that ignoring it over and over means the next people are going to do the same thing, even if they're not on your team, and they're going to use that power against you, it's dangerous. If you're on that side, then this quote really fits. It comes from Richard Henry Lee in a letter to Samuel Adams. He was writing because he was opposed to the structure of the Constitution passed by the Philadelphia Convention as it stood. He wanted to see amendments, I believe. And he says this: "The good people of the United States in their late generous contest," that was the War of Separation from the British, "contended for free government. in the fullest, clearest, and strongest sense, that they had no idea of being under despotic rule under the notion of strong government or in form of elective despotism. Strong government is spendy government. Government that spends like this is way too strong, way too centralized, and way too unconstitutional. And let's run with that. I hope you found this interesting, educational, insightful. If you did like what we're talking about here, or at least if you enjoyed the conversation, please smash that like button, share the link with as many people as you can, whether it's through email or on social. And I appreciate everyone who's tuning in. Justin, Brian XX, Matt Hugh, Ryan Patrick, EHP Training, all of you who are watching live, and also if you happen to be watching later on in the archives, I'm very grateful for you stopping by, for leaving comments, etc. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family, friends, and your loved ones. Very safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. Maybe eat a little bit too much. It'll be fun. And we can go to the gym on Friday and Saturday, right? But I'll be back. I'm not going to do an episode on Friday, but I will be back next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as usual, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you again for watching. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.